we're racing against the problems being caused. Chesterton said that progress is the mother of problems. That actually, when we make progress, we're also creating problems. He was talking specifically about what he called petrol traffic back in the early 1930s. He said, by the way, that anybody who knows my habits will realise that I'm not against progress, particularly where petrol traffic is concerned, because I'm very happy to use a car. He said, though I am somewhat concerned by the curious evolution of petrol traffic in the United States, where the wheel has entirely replaced legs. That was another piece of just gratuitous attack on America, but I'm going away with that as well because that was Chesterton. So we all like what Chesterton says. But I hope that something will turn up. You know, what's happening is that we create problems, everything's accelerating, we have to create solutions to problems at an ever quicker, faster rate. We've now, since the Industrial Revolution, and accelerating ever since then, are in a race against ourselves, a race against time. I think amongst others, Thomas Howard spoke about the difference between life before the Industrial Revolution, which could be called a dance of life, where the whole culture and annual life of the people revolved around the seasons of the year, the agricultural seasons and the liturgical seasons, and they went hand in hand, and that was the way life went. Cyclically, one year after another, a dance of life. But now it's a race against time and a race against ourselves, and a race where it's getting more and more difficult because things are not just progressing, they are accelerating. And the other theoretical virtue is love, but of course not love as a Christian would understand it, not love as self-sacrifice for another, not laying down our life for our friends. It's love of economic growth. And it was also mentioned this morning how the fact that our whole economy is driven by debt. And even the currency that we use is created by a private company at a profit and at a loan that we have to pay. We, in real terms, in real world, have to pay back with interest. Now, of course, if an economy is debt-driven, it has to continue to expand just to stay where it is. Because you have to not just earn the 100%, you have to earn the 100% plus the interest that's due in real world. So this debt-driven dynamic militates against sustainability. And it militates against genuine virtues, not theoretical virtues, such as prudence and temperance. And when you saw that first talk this morning, those two cardinal virtues were entirely absent in all of those economic decisions made by the financial sector leading up to the crash. Prudence and temperance are not part of what it is to be virtuous in the economic world in which we live today. Instead, we have get rich, be happy. A mad mantra to a false god, or he who dies with the most toys wins. Unfortunately, that person finds out it wasn't the end of the game when they die. Mahatma Gandhi said that the world has enough for everybody's need, but not for everybody's greed. Now this is important because need, at least in the material sense, is finite, but greed is not. Greed is infinite. You know, my father had some sagacious advice for me. He said, son, he said, when you grow up, he said, if you have to choose between being a drunkard or a gambler, be a drunkard. You can see why I went off the rails, can't you? I was actually a very good drunkard for many years. But I never did take up gambling. And my father's rationale was simple. There's a limit to how much you can drink. There's no limit to how much you can gamble. Need and greed. We live in an economic environment that does not know the difference between need and greed. In fact, the modern language, you see children in a toy shop. I need that. I need one of those. No, they don't. And someone should tell them how to speak English. And of course, it all comes down to satisfaction. From the Latin word satis, meaning enough. When do we feel that we have enough? Well, in a world without God, in a world that worships wealth, there never is enough. We always want more. I think someone called it the moronic approach. But how does this end up? Let's say that you were to earn loads and loads of money. Let's say you were a working class boy from London, and beyond all your wildest dreams, you became a millionaire by the time you were 24. Isn't this a perfect scenario? Well, it happened in real life. Once upon a time, there were 4 boys from London who became famous and became millionaires by the time they were aged 24, and then they sang a song called I Can't Get No Satisfaction. The Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards. Doesn't matter how much money we've got. If we don't know what life's all about, we're still going to be unsatisfied. We still won't get any satisfaction. Okay, so this is the problem. Let's look at the solution for the remainder of the talk. Incidentally, by the way, I've, in good Chestertonian fashion, completely and utterly lost my... Oh, there's a clock there. Lost my watch. And what I found in my pocket, the one thing I couldn't find was my watch. For those of you who know that particular essay by Chesterton. But I want to give you a practical example. I find this very, very encouraging about how we, as individuals, can change the world. You know, we've all got a little bit jaded, having experienced in our psychological pasts, you know, the hippies, you know, make love, not war, man. That's what you need to do. And as long as we do that, everything will be okay. So we're tempted to not take idealism too seriously, and we're tempted to feel there's not much we can do. And this is one of the big problems, by the way, is the temptation to despair. To look at that, how big, you know, if we were worried about how big government was back at the time of the Boston Tea Party, and how extortionate 3% was for taxes, or how big government was 100 years ago in the United States, and what's the American Civil War, the war between the states, that sort of, those issues. It's nothing compared with what we have today. Not just a federal government which has more power than ever, but a federal government is part of a globalized economic and political system that seems completely unstoppable. And here are we, individuals, facing this juggernaut that's billions of times bigger and billions of times richer than we are. It's very easy to succumb to the temptation to despair. Yet despair is a sin. In fact, despair is a mortal sin. And there's no need to do it. Now, apart from the purely metaphysical reason that life's ultimately about getting to heaven anyway, we can change the world for the better, and all of us are called to do it. That's what living